Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the BFI Future Film Festival. My name is Alex, and I'm the festival programmer and producer. And today's session has been curated in collaboration with Digital Orchid, who are the scanning partner on high-profile film productions such as Murder on the Orient Express, which was shot on iconic 65mm film. And in this session, we'll discuss all practicalities related to shooting on film. Our session today will be hosted by Callum Just, who founded Digital Orchid. But just before I hand over to Callum, I just wanted to let you know how today's session will work. So we have our festival team working behind the scenes today. My colleague Noel is managing the chat box. So for any more general questions that you have about the festival or upcoming events in the festival, the generic questions about the BFI or BFI Film Academy, please ask Noel in the chat box, and he'll kind of be managing that chat box throughout this session. But for any questions that you have for our panelists today, for Digital Orchid, Molly or Olan, then please put those questions in the Q&A box on the bottom of your screens. And my colleague Winnie is managing that box, and we'll devote the last 15 minutes of the session to your questions, and we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. I also wanted to let you know that we've set up a Facebook networking group for you guys to network on there. So Noel will shortly post the link to that Facebook group in the chat if he hasn't already. I can't see, there are so many messages. But yes, that's the Facebook group. That's the place where you guys can network amongst yourselves. And now, just before I hand over to Callum, I wanted to also let you know that the session today is being recorded. The recording will be uploaded to the BFI YouTube channel after the festival, so in the next 2 or 3 weeks. The best way to find out when the session is up is to follow us on Twitter, and we'll do a little update on there once the session is ready for you if you want to watch it again. And now, without further ado, over to Callum to introduce our lovely panelists to you. Enjoy the session.
Quick summary there. We've got Molly, cinematographer and director based in London, went to the NFTS and did a cinematography course in 2019, was longlisted for a BAFTA, won a Student Academy Award. Her graduation documentary, City of Children, has played at many festivals, including Camerimage. She works across documentary, fiction, and advertising commercials. Hopefully, Molly, you heard all of that.
Yeah, I heard it. All good.
Wonderful. And we're also joined by Olan, who's a cinematographer, heavily influenced by his passion for art and culture and style. He has worked on a huge range of projects, shooting for the likes of the BBC, Channel 4, Sky. He shoots a lot of content for fashion, lifestyle, and luxury brands, such as Calvin Klein, Nike, Puma, and Off-White. He's also responsible for a series of short films that have generated a huge cult following among indie film enthusiasts accolades, including a win at the Tribeca Film Festival, a selection at the Short of the Week, and has been selected for the BFI Future Film Festival and Sundance Film Festival. So we're going to start today's discussion with a little clip of both our panelists' work. So we'll start with Molly's.
You took some time away from me. I see you made your mind. Just read the signs, it's clear to see. I'm trying to make you mine. 'Cause love is blind, your hurt is fine. To heal it takes with the music of my mind. Most of it seems unfinished now. I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
My family.
I was there with my dad, my mom, and my sister.
I remember the sound of soldiers passing in the
And
street.
scent does trigger memory.
And feet of the sun.
First question really for Molly, after that beautiful sort of montage of work there. is what drives your creative decisions when choosing a format?
I think, there's a magic in film that we always I'll always push for, but sometimes it's just not right for the project. But something that would drive me, the reason that I love shooting on film is because of the imperfections, and it's because of the not everyone's crowding around a monitor looking at every tiny section of a frame, and there's stuff that you get back. It feels like it has a beating heart. It's a different beast to what you can get back on digital, which everyone's seen 100 times. You see it the image is seen by so many people and commented by so many people when you're making it, whereas when you're shooting film, there's something so magical about shooting it and trusting in the process and making decisions that you feel strongly about, and sometimes they come back and you're like, whoa, that wasn't kind of what I was expecting, but it's even better than what you're expecting, and you learn in a different way, and you kind of progress in a different way, and for me, there's a magic to it. I mean, that's sometimes it's the wrong format for many reasons. If you're struck for time, or the director is inexperienced, or you're in difficult light conditions, then maybe it's not the right format. But yeah,
I think you put your finger on it there. It's that word magic. There is something magical about film, and it's organic, and you don't always know what you're going to get at the end of it. And I presume there are days where you shoot where you're ecstatic about what comes out, and I presume equally there are some times that you think, oh, this didn't work quite as well as it could have.
Yeah, for sure.
And maybe we can have Olan's clip. Phil, thank you for playing that. I've just switched my video off because the internet is pretty bad where I am. Olan, do you want to just tell us a little bit about that project? What it was for, stock that you shot on lenses? There was a huge amount of positive feedback there in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Callum. So that was a music video by a wonderful artist called Gina Williams, and it was directed by an equally amazing lady called Fern O'Mealy, who I believe Molly has actually worked with as well. I mean, I can't take credit for how that particular piece came out. I think a lot of credit goes to the director and director being able to come up with those wonderful images. But on a technical perspective, we shot that on 16mm film with an array of stocks. Actually, we used the daylight stock 250D for the daylight scenes. And we shot with the 500T as well when we lost light. That was with a 416 ARRI camera, and if I recall correctly, I think we shot on some Cooke lenses, like the Cooke Pancros 16mm ones. Yeah, that's as much as I can remember for now.
And why film on that project? And I guess more generally for you, why film?
Yeah, I guess it was it was kind of like a no-brainer actually. Fern, who, like I mentioned, her aesthetics are very much about authenticity, and also a lot of her film, a lot of her photography is film photography, so it's almost as though the way she sees the world is almost in that kind of like film world. Again, that's all she's familiar with, so it will be a disservice to try and convince a director who's very used to seeing the world in that kind of palette to shoot digitally. Also, I think one thing that was very important to us was to have this almost time capsule feel to the video. Like, it could be something that was shot or happened about, I don't know, 20 years ago or 60 years ago, or it could be like, yesterday.
It's
so
timeless.
I think, exactly.
Absolutely.
I think that's the word I'm looking for. Something that's timeless. And on a second note, it's also how beautifully film renders skin tones. It's incredible. I mean, a lot of the work we do with digital is trying so hard to make digital look like film. Whereas, with film, it just looks, like film. So it's like the colors and also how gentle it is on skin. It's just, it's amazing. Again, like Molly said, it's not a silver bullet, even though a lot of people do try and use it as such. It has its uses, and when you use it rightly, it sings.
As DPs, I guess, question for both of you: DPs that are known for shooting film, which maybe is a rarer thing these days. Do you find that people are coming to you and saying, "I want, I need to shoot digitally, but I want the film look"? How do you deal with that, Molly?
I mean, I don't think, maybe I am a DP known for shooting film, but I don't know that I don't know that I am anyway. But I think building lots and having a really good DIT on set who, is the person that looks after the rushes and can help you grade them to look more like film. And I work really closely with one DIT who, we always try and grade stuff while we're shooting it so that when they're editing, it looks nearer to what we want it to look like than they would get if it just looked straight out of the camera. But yes, I mean, it's a tough one. Find graders that you like, find colorists that you like, and try and get that in before you shoot, so that you're looking at colors and stuff before LUTs and before you get somewhere. I think that helps.
And one of the big things that we certainly come up against as a company is cost, is budget, is, people don't want to, or there's this, people think that film is expensive. It's difficult. It's a hard thing to do, and it's a risky thing to do. How do you overcome that? Because it is certainly, we found it fairly constant. Olan, what's your technique to getting film across the line?
So I mean, my formula is always, and it's very unromantic, because when you want to shoot film, or when you want to shoot and film, you always want to, just go with your gut instinct and just be, I guess, visceral about it. But my approach with the director is always very, it's all about the numbers. So, okay, we know we're shooting a music video. How long is the music video? Is it like 3 minutes long? Is it 4 minutes long? Then you need to start thinking about your shooting ratio. So you go, okay, if it's a 4-minute song and we're only going to shoot performances, a performance across a 3-minute video, that's going to be 3 minutes long. If we're shooting 16 on 16 mil, 400 foot affords me 10 minutes. So with every 400 foot roll, you are looking at being able to shoot 3 performances. So I think that it's always good to work back from kind of almost reverse engineering the edit to facilitate how much film you think you might need. And when you cut it down to, the bare bones and go, okay, cool, we need 6 performances, so we need like 2 400 foot rolls. Then you start opening up conversations with, your whoever's going to handle your post, whether that's, Kodak or whoever's going to do your printing, and work out how much it would cost to process and scan per roll. And then, so it's almost as you will work out your costs and, talk to the producer and see what the budget is. That's how I tend to work on film. Again, it's not romantic. It's not nice. It's but what it does give you is it gives everyone discipline. So when you get on set, there's no way you will be, there just, shooting take after takes after takes. So it just makes sure everyone is, I guess, attentive, and everyone is very disciplined with how we approach the work. So I think that's one good thing, just because you have to pay attention to the detail, to the numbers. And so I think that's how I go about it. It's all about numbers, spreadsheets, and unfortunately the fun only comes when you get the dailies back.
I've always remember being on a fairly big film set and talking to a producer about shooting film, and he was saying at the time, yeah, no one messes around on set when you shoot film, because once you press record, you hear the money going through the camera in a way that you just don't on digital. And certainly from, you know, us as a company, Digital Orchard as a company, we deal with film and digital, and you know, a same size project will have a shooting ratio of 10-1 on film and might have 50, 60, 71 on digital. And are they ending up with a better product at the end? I don't think so. So I think you're absolutely right.
I also think there's a bit of a myth about, sometimes it can, like, if your image looks better because you're shooting on film, often it does, in my opinion. And therefore you need less to get there. Like, there's, like, for example, that Gucci project that was on there, that was me and the director. I loaded and I focus pulled, and I don't recommend this, but like, that was me and him just like rolling around with a 16mm camera. And I think there's sort of a bit of a myth that you need more crew and you need more support for it. And sometimes, you know, the magic is in kind of like flashing the mag before you load it, and me being the rubbish loader.
Yeah. So I think then what we've heard there is the benefits to us as filmmakers and storytellers. What do you think the benefit to the audience is? And it's something that my mother, of all people, has asked me a number of times, is, you know, why do we shoot on film still? Why do we need it?
I think, I'll jump in and try and answer that. I think it's very subconscious. I remember when I started messing about with cameras, which is about 10 years ago. You know, this was during the come up of the DSLRs, when, you know, everyone could pick up a 550D or 5D and shoot stuff. And I remember when I would shoot things, I'll be like, this doesn't look like a film. This doesn't look cinematic. Mm. And whereas if someone had picked up a film camera then, or, you know, a Super 8 camera and shot something, it would look like a film. And, you know, you have to start asking yourself, why is that the case? And that's because, you know, when we've been watching films for like, I don't know when people started making films, like 90 years or whatever.
100 years plus.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I'd say maybe 2000 and maybe very early 2000s, or I'd say even like around 2008, when digital overtook film in terms of like the number of films that were getting shot on celluloid on film versus films getting shot on digital in Hollywood. So we subconsciously know what a film should look like, or what motion picture should look like. So when digital came along, the brain just didn't believe it looked like a film. And, you know, a lot of the things we do with digital, whether, you know, the grading that we do, is how can we make that digital image look like film, i.e. can we have that contrast that we have on film? You know, how you have these dense blacks on film, or these interesting roll-off in your highlights, or, you know, how nice and gentle skin looks. So we start using things like filters or vintage lenses. So I think, just to answer your questions, I think it does make a massive difference, and we've tried so hard over time to, you know, trick our audience into embracing digital to be like, you know, what we all know to be film. So I think people do realize.
Yeah, Molly, what do you?
I think there's like a human element to 16mm in the way that or film in general, in the way that it moves. You know, like when we walk down the road, like we blink, like light hits our eyes in funny ways, and like we have an emotional reaction to life that isn't just a static image that sits still. We have a heartbeat, you know, we feel it in our head, like we don't know it, but we're blinking, and like the images are flickering. And to me, that's what 16mm does, is it feels like you connect to it emotionally, because it feels like magic, like human life, like reaction, like emotion, whereas a digital image sits still. And like sometimes that's the coldness that I feel when I'm watching digital. Maybe over romanticizing it a bit.
And do you think there's for people maybe who don't know, so there are lots of different gauges of film. So you've got 8mm, 16mm, 35mm, all the way up to 65mm. Does that factor much into your sort of, when you're working through a project, you know, is there an ideal? Would you like to shoot on 35, but the budget isn't there? Or do you want to shoot on 8mm or 16mm for certain things? Olan.
I would say never 8mm. I mean, if the project calls for that home video kind of like look. I mean, I started messing about with film on a Super 8 camera. I think someone gave me an advice, if you want to get into film, you know, buy a Super 8 camera and just shoot stuff. I mean, it looks fine for like memories, but yeah, I wouldn't shoot on Super 8 if I have a choice. I think my go-to is 35, and I'll tell you why. I think 16mm is great if you're going for that romantic, timeless feel. But I think my thing with 16 is sometimes just a bit too gritty for kind of like the kind of images I like. So I tend to push for 35, and we always end up shooting on 16 again, just from a cost perspective. But then again, you know, there are ways you can make 16 look like 35. Maybe shoot it cleanly, i.e. overexposed, and maybe shoot with longer lenses so that you can cheat that depth of field. Yeah, so there are things you can do, but left to me, I'd like to shoot everything on 35, unless, you know, the creative calls for a 16mm look.
Yeah. And when you talk about gritty, maybe for people who aren't quite as technical, you know, can you explain that a little bit in terms of the grain?
Yeah, so yeah, the grit is more the size of the grain. So 16mm has bigger and coarser grain, and it's a bit more I think the imagery is a lot softer compared to 35. Again, if you shoot 35 cleanly, again, when I say cleanly, you know, you expose your images well, and you have enough light going into your camera, 35 quickly can start looking like digital. And again, it's a testament to how much digital has, you know, come from, you know, when it first of all started. So I know some directors and some DPs don't like 35 for that reason, because, you know, I might as well shoot digital if my image is going to come out looking like digital. But, you know, there's some nuances you would get with film that you can't get with digital, whether it's like the film burns or, you know, the grain, the colors. But, you know, like I said, digital has come a long way. So I know people don't like 35 for that reason, but I like it because it's clean and, you know, it has that. Yeah, it's very subtle. But yeah, I think Molly likes 16 though, so I don't.
Yeah. Saw that coming.
Yeah, so Molly, where does your love of 16? Because you shoot a lot of 16.
I think my love of 16 comes from zoom lenses, which sounds mental, but the idea of like having a tiny zoom that you can put on your shoulder, that you can like, you know, get like 11-165 zoom, which is like the equivalent to a 300 zoom on the 35mm camera. You know, to get that on your shoulder on a 35mm camera, you're talking about a lens this big. And I really miss that when I'm shooting. You know, I'm like, it's something, and I don't really use zooms that much when I'm on 35 at all. So maybe it's something that I just associate with 16. But being able to be free and small and compact and move in a way that gives, I think, energy to a piece is why 16mm works for me.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, the cost of entry point of 16 is very cheap still. You know, there are lots of cameras out there, lots of DPs have their own cameras. You know, it's much easier to wangle yourself a free 16mm package from Panavision, Arri, Take-Two, whoever it is, than it is a 35mm package. So we see certainly young filmmakers coming through will gravitate towards 16 before sort of progressing up. So yeah, no, I think that's interesting. And any 8mm love from you, Molly?
Well, only purely from like past family films that I've sort of like collected and watched and like to still project with like a hand crank. But no, shooting it, no, not really. I
Too
mean, I'd go,
fiddly.
yeah, I'd go Bolex 16mm 100-foot loads if I've got to go small.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Little shout out there that Kodak have just installed an 8mm processor. So it's something they hadn't offered up to this point. And maybe if we can come on to hybrid production. So a show where do you find yourself ever shooting film and digital within the same production? Is that something either of you have done or intend to do?
Yeah, I mean, hybrids or mixed format, it was famously called, I think about 3 years ago when it became a thing where people couldn't afford to shoot on film, shoot the whole thing on film, but they wanted to kind of, mess around with the format. Yeah, I think, yeah, I liked it then. I think it works for, a particular style of music video or sports piece. Again, it's about putting texture into that very often banal look of digital. I think that's the appeal of, the hybrids and the mixed format. From my perspective, again, I have a love and hate relationship with that particular type of format, just because people oftentimes use it out of laziness. So for me, if it works nicely in the piece we're trying to make, I would fully embrace it. But I'm usually, if you want to shoot film, let's just like shoot film. If you want to shoot digital, let's just shoot digital. So I try to separate the two, but I know there's always a time and place for it.
Yeah. Molly, what's your experience been?
I was trying to think when I saw the question how much mixed format I've done, and I think I work with a director called Frank LeBon a lot, who is actually known for mixed media, but actually looking at his work, it's not really mixed media because a lot of the time we shoot one format, but he'll print it onto paper and then rescan it. So I don't know, his brain works in a incredible way, but I don't know if you'd call it mixed format shooting, more just like the image is then manipulated in a way that is, not traditional.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is sometimes a barrier to filmmaking is that knowledge that it is, it's something that has been around for a long time, but I think the last few generations of filmmakers haven't necessarily been taught how to load magazines, how to expose for film. I mean, Molly, you went to the NFTS and they've still got quite a strong film course. Well, not film course, but a film element to the course. Obviously, that did you in fantastic stead. But, DPs of your generation, do you think it's difficult for them to pick up a film camera for the first time? Is it intimidating?
I mean, I think you've got to learn to make mistakes, and I think that's one of the main things of being a DP is, and being a good DP is like being able to pick yourself up when you've made a mistake, learn from it, and take it on to the next project. I think if you fall on that kind of hurdle, you're always gonna make mistakes. So you're gonna fall hard, and you're not gonna get back up if you can't do that. I went to Bournemouth before I went to NFTS, and that's where I sort of picked up a film camera before, and that's some of the worst rushes that the lads must have ever seen in their entire life. Like, so underexposed, so overexposed, flashed, loaded backwards, in the can, messy states of it. And I think you've just got to do it. You've got to pick up a film camera, mess it up, redo it, learn how to do it. It's part of the nature of filmmaking, I think. Yeah.
And Oland, what's your experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, like Molly said, you have to get your hands dirty and not be afraid of the format. I think, again, a lot of the techniques that we are seeing in the short form world, which will eventually influence the long form world, is, again, out of mistakes. The way an editor is able to look at your dailies or your rushes and see these imperfections, again, whether it's like the film burns or, a mild flash of the mag. That being used cleverly in the edit, it's what's giving us these new refreshing voices that people are embracing, and it's about how can they recreate that mistake or that error. So I think you just have to get your hands dirty, and again, don't wait until you have a really important project to test. So whether
it means too late at that point.
And I think that's why people are so nervous around film. So make sure you have your trial time, on your own time when you're not working on someone else's project. So you can't afford to mess up a production's project. You can mess up your personal project or your school project. So use that time to make your mistakes and learn, as opposed to making those mistakes on someone else's money, because people don't like that, and you might never work again because that just becomes your reputation. Now that guy who flashed that mag.
And do you find it difficult to crew up for projects that are film based as opposed to digital based? Molly, you nodding there.
I mean, I think this is something that comes into whether you pick film or digital. And I shot a BBC short recently on film, and we're struggling to find a focus puller who, when you're doing shorts, you're struggling to find focus pullers anyway, because there's not much money, and it's tough. And then you've got the added stress of like, have they pulled focus on film before? Can they find a loader that's going to be loading the film properly? So I think it's like something that you have to consider when you're what is your crew level when you're choosing film or digital. And if it's a commercial project, then fine. If it's a music video where you can't pay for a crew, then if you've got your team that will come with you from the commercial, then great. But if you don't, it's definitely something you have to consider. I mean, I've loaded so many of those projects myself that it's a really bad state of mind to get into, because you assume that everyone can load and they can't.
Yeah. And is there anywhere that you would particularly point people towards in terms of training? If people are trainees, loaders, even focus pullers who want to get a bit more experience on film?
I mean, I think go to not now because it's the middle of a pandemic and everyone's trying to keep numbers down. But when the world returns, call Panavision up and say, "Can I come in and sit with your mags and just get some stock that's already exposed, some gas stock, and just do it once, do it twice, do it 10 times, and just get good at it."
And does that actually a question for you, Molly? Does that actually then get you into a place where you actually then have your first real thing? Does that make it less daunting because you've messed about with gash, film? Do you still feel your panic when it's actually, this is it, I'm actually loading for an actual film, and you've just practiced on nonsense film previously?
Me, when I've loaded before.
Yeah, I mean, I asked that because personally, I mean, I don't load. I mean, the only thing I can load is a Bolex, and I've never. I mean, I've been taught to load 16. I tried it once, and I'm just like, I'll just leave it to loaders to do. It's something I'd love to do, but I'm just like, why, man? So I've always wondered, if you mess about in your spare time with gash, but on the real thing. How do you overcome that fear?
I mean, I would definitely love to not load on a project, but there's been times where Frank especially is like, I don't want any crew there. I want it to be just us two. And, you get a different emotional out of a performance, but then you get the stress of me loading. And I feel, many things have gone wrong. We almost lost a role of Harry Styles that we waited 5 days to shoot. And, he must have got paid £1 million on the project. So and then you're throwing up, but we didn't lose it, thank God. But things go wrong, but then things might go wrong, with the loader. Things go. Listen, on a commercial project, I would never do it. On a project where there's any, but.
And I can attest to things go wrong on digital all the time as well.
Exactly.
It is not clean sailing by a long way. And sometimes things on digital can go wrong that you can't really notice till you get into your final DI. Whereas with film, you've either got it or you haven't got it once it's gone through the bath.
Or you kind of half got it, like the blue channel is missing, or it's just grainy as hell. You know, which I think is the good thing about film. You know, film is organic, whereas digital is zeros and ones. You know, it's like what you see is what you get. Yes, you can put stuff into the grade and push colors around, but with film, it's like it captures the very life at that particular moment, the way the light flutters at that moment. The pigmentation and the talent, it's just alive and it's breathing. So I think, like I said, you have more of a spectrum of mess ups. So it could be like you do have the image, but maybe your red channel is messed up, maybe everything looks red, which again is quite cool, especially if you're doing a music video or short form content. Or maybe it's kind of out of focus, but there's still something very romantic about it being out of focus. So I think with film, even though it might go wrong, it's still usable most times. You can mask it on that. Yeah, it was intentional, and we kind of wanted something cool. Whereas if with digital, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah. How important is it to both of you to understand the technical side? And I don't want to jump into the technicals of stuff too deeply here today, but how important is it for you to understand what the film stock is, how it's developed, the chemical process? Because I know that there are many DPs that go both ways on this, but for you personally, Molly, how do you feel that impacts you as a filmmaker?
I think you've got to know the basics. I think, I always like to think there's like there's always like an emotional approach to something and a technical approach to something. And I think you have to have a basic understanding of both. And if you can have emotional reaction to something based on understanding how it's going to come out, then you're in like a really good stead to make a good film. If you know just the technicals and you have no emotional grasp on what you're trying to say or what the story is, then you might have a nice image, but who cares, And if you have an emotional reaction, but you don't have the technicals, then you might not get an image. So then, So I think it's a fine balance, but I think it's easy to get het up in the technicals and forget that you're telling a story or that you're trying to communicate something, and therefore ruin the piece. You have to be brave and jump in, but with a basic understanding of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Olan, how do you?
I mean, I strongly agree that you need to know the technicals. Again, how deep that technical knowledge is. Again, that's up for debate, because before you break the rules, it's worth knowing what the rules are. So when you do break them, there is some kind of intentionality behind why you're breaking the rules, and you can articulate that. Maybe the emotion of the film calls for you to break that rule. An example would be when you shoot with a tungsten stock. So let's say the 500T, and you shoot that, in daylight. Technically you're meant to color correct that, so that when you get your rushes back, they just don't look blue as hell. But if you do know that if you don't use a color correction filter, it's going to look very blue. Maybe you want it to look blue. Whereas if you didn't know the technicals of it and you just shot it without color correcting it with a filter, you might get those rushes back, and your director's looking at you like, why does this look blue? And you don't know why it looks blue. So I think it's worth knowing the basics. But I'll encourage you not to let the technicals override the emotional, because I think that's one thing I try not to do when I work with maybe first-time directors or new directors, because if you keep on trying to hammer down that traditional way of doing things, you don't find new voices or find new eclectic way of doing things. So I think, there's always room to, sometimes let go of the technical, but I think there's definitely room to ensure you have, a strong technical knowledge, but more importantly, kind of know the story and the emotional side of things.
I think the other thing I'd say there, just to add that is, you know, trust your crew, trust your lab, and if you don't know something, just ask. You know, especially with Kodak and you know, they want filmmakers. Obviously, they need filmmakers to continue to shoot films. So it's in their interest to give as much knowledge about the stock and the process. And two little things that just jumped to mind when you're saying there is the Kodak website. There's a lot of information about film there, and also the American Cinematographer's Manual. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through that, but that's certainly when I was sort of learning more about film. There's a huge amount of information in there. Really good stuff.
I think also that I always try and get the rushes, because so often as a DP you only see the edit and the, you know, when you're in the grade. I always try and get the rushes off the lab so that you can see, oh, those windows were like way overexposed, but actually they completely held, you know. And I think I try and keep up on that, so then you can kind of track your like what you were thinking and if that translated.
Actually, on that note, Callum, so if I've shot something, right, and I send it to Kodak and Kodak sends it to you guys cannot color time it. So maybe I've overexposed like 3 stops and it looks like quite bad. And I get the rushes back. I'm like, damn, I'm so good. Look at how beautiful it looks. That's because you guys have kind of like fixed things, right? So that the rushes aren't like, you know, what I have shot exactly. You have, you know, to an extent, corrected stuff. Am I correct in that understanding?
Yes, there are a number of tools. So our scanning department's headed up by Dan Redrup, who's been a scan operator for years and years and years. And you know, he has a relationship with you as DPs, and you know, there'll always be a discussion before scanning of, you know, did you mean to overexpose this by 3 stops, or can we pull it back? And I think that's the special about film, is it's got that extra latitude, and we can pull information back during the scanning process that you just can't pull back in digital. Once you've clipped in digital, whereas there is more room for maybe mistakes as creative decisions, strong creative decisions. So yeah, no, absolutely. Looking ahead towards, you know, the future, because that's where you look when you look ahead. Well, what role do you think film has got in an ever-increasing digitized world, in a world that we're looking at stuff less on the big screen and more on the micro screen, and in a world that seems fixated by virtual production and things like that? Where do you think film is going to lie? Molly, big question, I know.
Oh God, tough question. I think film won't die. Is the basics of it. I think, you know, we have a human reaction to it that is too strong for it to die. Where it will sit, I hope it doesn't. I'd hope that digital doesn't get so close to being 35 or 65 that we sort of forget that end of it and go for the smaller end. I hope. I don't know. I think it's kind of just like goes round in circles, doesn't it? We all like, I've got a vinyl player. I listen to vinyl. My mum thinks I'm mental, you know, and I think it's the same discussion. It's like, we're going to fall in love. One year we're going to be in love with 16 mil. There's going to be, and then next year everyone's going to want to shoot on 65. And like, I don't know. I think the statistics bear out exactly what you're saying, Molly. That we see film sales, you know, tracking up and down, and you know, obviously we're nowhere near the millions and millions of feet that we were shooting, you know, in the 2010s, but there is a progression up, and it is interesting. It spikes in 16 mil some years, and then it spikes in 35 mil, and you know, it's and exactly as you say, it's not dying, you know. But I think it's interesting to see where it will fit in, because I think the shame for me would be that people only shoot film because they want the filmy, gritty look of 16 mil. You know, it's there is something special about 65, and there is something absolutely magical about 35. I wish someone gave me the budget to shoot 35.
Or you can put your own money into it.
That's just a shout out to anyone that wants to give me money to shoot 35.
We'll put your contact details up at the end.
Thank you.
Maybe a little PayPal link. Olan, what do you see sort of us heading towards for film?
I mean, I agree. Like, it's cyclical. It would come, then it will go, then it would come back, then it would go, then it would come back. I don't think it's ever going to die. Again, if you look at even film photography, for example, you know, it died. People thought it died about 10 years ago when, you know, DSLRs came around. And then if you look at all the young kids today, the teenagers, everyone's got like a film camera, and everyone's like, you know, I only want to shoot film. And I'm sure, you know, when they grow older and, you know, technology moves on, you know, maybe they will move away from that. Then, you know, in 50 years' time, some new young kids will come around and go, oh, we have rediscovered this this format. So yeah, I think it's going to be around and around in circles. Again, I know digital is kind of rapidly closing that chasm between like film, between analog or celluloid and digital in a sense. You know, technology is getting better. People are getting better at color grading. They're better tools. People are creating filters, and everyone's mission is to get that film look. You know, 10 years ago there were these these filters that people use for film photography, use for digital photography. I think there was VSCO, or is it Visco? All these like LUTs to make your digital look like film, and it's going to get to a point where people will go, well, I can't really tell the difference. So why not just shoot digital? And then you would have to find, I guess, other reasons to advocate for film, whether it's the discipline that film gives you, or whether it's that attention everyone brings to the project when they hear that mag like rolling. Or yeah, I think that's where we're probably heading to. But I don't think it's going to die. It's just going to be around and around. Then yeah, it's going to die.
Just before we jump onto questions, because there's a huge number of questions coming through. What's up next for both of you? What's coming in the future, but the near future? Molly, what are you up to at the moment? What's coming down the line?
I am just in pre-production on my first TV show called Super Ho, and I'm loving it. It's great. It's so much fun having time to prep and think about things rather than turning over projects really quickly. So first big fiction project. I'm very excited.
Cool. Olan, what's next for you?
I'm kind of similarly, I'm getting prep for a feature film, my debut feature film. When I mean debut film, I'm deep in. It's not my film. Similar to what you said, Molly. Currently in prep for that to start shooting in about 3 weeks. So really, really looking forward to it. She'll be good. Fingers crossed.
Cool.
Indeed, digital though.
So we've got a lot of questions come through, so we will start going through some of them. What have we got here? What equipment do you tend to use on set when you're shooting film? Olan, what's your go-to camera and lenses?
So if it's 16mm, I would always shoot on a 416 if there is money for it. So there's an ARRI 416 camera. If there is no money, then I'll use an SR3, and that's because there's usually maybe a loader that I know who's looking to come up as a DP and has a film camera, or there might be another DP who has an SR3 that he or she's happy to loan the production. That as far as cameras go. With regards to lenses, I think my lens choices are very limited in the sense of it would either be super speeds just because they're really fast. If I want to be experimental, I might, try something else and be like a zoom. I think there's a zoom called the Devil Zoom, which is like a Canon 6066, which is kind of like a go-to for me. I would have my light meter on set. And something I also do is I do usually have a digital camera as well, just because sometimes directors just need to be directors and producers need to be, I guess, placated to show them roughly what your thinking is. So if I've lined up a shot and we've lit the shot, I'll usually just take a snap on my digital camera just to show them, hey, this is where I'm kind of going with this, so they kind of agree to it. Because what you could do, I could expose it properly, then they get into the grade and do whatever they want to do with it. But if we have some kind of consensus on set, it's usually handy to do that. And also from my perspective, I think it's just for my own sanity as well, just knowing I'm happy with the underexposure I might be doing on set. So I know it's not a popular thing, but I usually carry a digital camera as well as my light meter.
I will say I do a lot of work with Harris Sambalukos, who is a big film advocate, and that's exactly what he does. He has a digital Leica, and he shoots a still of everything, and he'll send it back to the lab for us to have as a reference, and he'll show it to Ken, his longtime directing partner. You're in safe hands. Molly, what's your go-to bit of equipment?
Probably the same 416, if not an SR3 film. Grew up on an SR3, so I feel sort of comfortable with an SR3, but 416 would be my go-to. And then I just love shooting on ultras, 16mm ultras. They're super sharp, and they give that 16mm just something to bite onto when it's mushy as hell and you've underexposed it.
Question for both of you. Something that's asked, I think, quite a lot is, would you recommend studying cinematography or getting hands-on experience?
I'm happy to go first. I guess there's no right or wrong, and each has their advantages and disadvantages. I didn't go to film school. I didn't study film in an institution. I studied it in my own spare time, reading books, watching YouTube, watching Vimeo, and talking to people. The pros of that is, one, it's less expensive. Two, you get to learn in your own time, and also learn to your own taste. So if, for example, you've gone to a film institution, again, I haven't been to one, so Molly, feel free to correct me. Someone might go, this is the right way to do things. You do A, then you do B, then you do C, then you do D. When you leave that institution, that then becomes your practice. If you self-learn, you might accidentally have started out B, then you do C, then you do A, then you do D. And you might get roughly the same result, but there might just be like a little source or like a little thing with you doing things your own way. So I think that there is some merit in self-learning, but if you're not someone who has discipline to self-learn and be accountable to yourself, or have people around you that will hold you accountable, then I strongly recommend you go to a film school. Also, the biggest advantage to going to a film school is having that community and that tribe around you who are very interested in the same thing you're interested in, who are trying to do the same thing you're doing and have that passion and interest. And then you can sort of, I guess, bounce off each other, inspire each other, have that healthy competition. Whereas if you don't go to film school and you're just surrounded by friends who perhaps like other things, like music or like maths, you might get to a point in time where you kind of need that outside support, which you might not have. But social media has come a long way, and there's always ways to find a tribe and a community by reaching out to folks. So that's my 2 pence on that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like, you can go to film. I'm massively over. Like, I went to Bournemouth and to NFTS, both film schools. I think it's amazing what it can do to you. It gives you tools in your hand very quickly. You can make mistakes. You can create a community for yourself, but it can also cripple you and make you think that you should be doing things in a certain way when actually there's not really any right way of filmmaking, as long as you know. make films and people like them. So
we've got an interesting question here. How do you go from shooting stills photography to moving image? I think that's quite an interesting one. Either of you, I know that's a bit of a jump there, but
yeah, I think
what would you say?
A lot of people have done that. I mean, if you're talking from a DP's perspective, I mean, I'll just start maybe from a directing perspective. There are lots of directors who started off just shooting, and I think they easily just moved to motion picture, because I think the most important thing is the eye. I mean, if your eye, if you can't see what you're trying to, if you can't envisage what you're trying to create, or kind of like come up with the right premise or right idea, it's very hard to bring it to life. So, you know, if you have a film camera, the tenets are the same: shutter speed, ISO, and your iris. Like, it doesn't change with motion picture. I mean, maybe with motion picture, it takes one of those things. I mean, you can still change your shutter speed when it comes to film, but people will say, you know, the shutter speed should always be 180. But yeah, those the three things that sit on the triangle is the same when it comes to motion pictures. I don't think the barrier to moving from stills to motion picture is that hard. I mean, the only thing you need to bear in mind is if the camera needs to move, things become expensive real quick. So, you know, you might want a smooth motion, then that means I need to get a steady cam. Do I need to get a tripod? How sturdy is that tripod? Yeah, so they're those little gotchas that you have. But, you know, the first thing you can do, just put a motion picture camera on sticks and just tell your talent to just do stuff. Then, you know, the camera isn't moving, so you still have that photographic approach to your work, but you have, you know, 24 frames per second.
Yeah, I think stills are
another question up here. No, go on, Molly.
No, I mean, I just think it's good training for framing, and for, you know, if you can take stills, even if it's on your iPhone, then I think you're in better stead, because if you can frame one image, we can kind of, you know, in filmmaking, we kind of hide our framing a bit because we don't have so much pressure on one frame.
Yeah. Interesting question here. Have either of you ever developed your own film, either stills or cine?
Yeah, I do, or I used to do a lot of processing. It's actually not as daunting as people make it out to be. So initially, people used to go a black and white film is the easiest to develop, because I think you probably need only one bath. They're like something called a mono bath, which you kind of just put on the film and that's it. Whereas with color film, you need to make sure some of those chemicals are at a particular temperature before you get them done. But again, like it's not that it's not as daunting as people make it out to be. There have been advances in this step. I think there's this company that made the tool I use. I think they're called Labbox, and it's just an easy way to unwind the film into the bath and just put the chemicals in, time things. I think after 15 minutes you would have your pictures done. The reason why I don't do it as much is sometimes I don't know when to stop using a particular chemical, because I think after a number of uses you're meant to like change them. So I would shoot something, you know, get home, use my old chemicals, and it comes out like not great. So yeah, so you have to keep an eye on, you know, always ensuring that you change your chemicals often. Yeah, but yeah, it's very fun actually.
And Molly, presumably you got to do a bit of chemistry work now?
I've never done it, and I'm very happy not to do it.
I will say once we're through the pandemic, Kodak do lab tours fairly frequently. So if people are interested in going to see the lab there, and I think CineLab do the same, just get in touch with them, and they are, you know, they're both really open, lovely people in both sets of labs. So go and see them. One question that has come up again and again in these questions from everyone is who your influences are. Who do you know, who shoots film that you love? This is always
I
a
mean,
horrible one.
I'd go
Or do you want to
Robbie
have
Ryan.
Okay.
Robbie Ryan is my 16 mil inspiration, I'd say.
Olan, anyone that takes your fancy?
I wouldn't say I have one. I mean, there's like someone who I really look up to. Just it's more in terms of how their philosophy influences their film work, and it's Bradford Young. But I wouldn't say it's because he shoots. I'm sure the films that I love that he shot were probably shot on digital. But yeah, I think it's more from like his ideologies and philosophies and how that influences how he shoots, which I would strongly encourage everyone to do. I think when you pick up a camera, it's worth kind of knowing what you like and exploring what your voice is and what you really want to achieve with your filmmaking, and let that influence how you work, because that's how you create work that's unique.
We've got a quickie question here. Is the camera or lens more critical in terms of film quality? Molly, do you want to?
We could be here all day.
I'd go, in terms of film, I'd go lens. In terms of digital, I mean, I'd go lens as well. But lens. I'd go lens, but just as a simple answer rather than an in-depth answer. We could be here all day if we start that.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to crack through as many as we can. A quick one again for Molly. Well, maybe again, not a quick one. Would you recommend the NFTS course for people?
Political.
Or would you recommend film school? Maybe a little broader.
Yeah, broader's good. It depends on how you practice. I personally struggled with not having freedom to just go out and shoot all the time, which is what I really, really enjoy, is like being on set and being hands-on and learning. I learn very practically, and I always have learned very practically, and therefore going to film school was really good, and I took so much away from it, and it was great. But that there is like a sort of halt in your process.
Yeah. Question for Olan. What have you got any tips when it comes to grading film versus grading digital?
Yes, I guess when it comes to film, like, don't do too much, man. It's just like, because when I shoot digital, my mission is to try and make it look like film. I even out my contrast, use more muted colors as opposed to poppy colors that you'd see on digital sensors, or maybe inducing a bit of like texture and grain. But with film, like, just bring back that contrast, put a bit of saturation, and just leave it at that. I think the best grades I've done with film have been works where we just did that, when you don't mess about with like colors, just bringing the contrast back from the log you get back from the dailies. So yeah, the less I do with film, the better it looks.
Molly, your experience of grading film?
Do as little as possible and talk to the lab.
Cool. Do you have an interest in shooting 65mm film? Molly?
I have, yeah. Hey, if someone will give me the budget.
Someone pay for it. I heard a joke story the other day about a DP who's been selling his kit and keeps 65 that he's shot on an ongoing personal project in his basement, and every time he gets a job he processes one roll, and I can see myself doing something like that. That if someone gave me the money or a project, I'd definitely love to shoot it. It's just money, isn't it?
Yeah, and also I would say availability of cameras is difficult with 65. There are only 2 sets of commercially available cameras, one from Panavision, one from ARRI, and they're in use a lot of the time on big budget films. So it's just sometimes hard to get hold of them.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. Wow.
Yeah, it is. We are less than 20 cameras in the world, I think. Have either of you had any huge disasters while shooting film? Keeping it positive here. Molly,
I've had massive disasters. more as a loader actually, like that when the film like pops out and spirals out and you're like sat in the bag trying to coil it up. I think as a DP, only disasters that people have liked, which is good, you know, like when you accidentally have a flash mag, or you know, things going in backwards or whatever. Happy disasters in the end. But as a loader, definitely.
No massive ones from my side. I think the only disaster I have had, again, similar to what Molly said, you know, when you're shooting on film and you don't close your viewfinder and you're just, you know, using the monitoring of the viewfinder and you have light leaks going into the mag through the viewfinder. I mean, it created some kind of weird veiling, but it looked very cool in the edit. But I remember getting the rushes back and I'm like, oh man, like this is horrible. Yeah, that, or maybe, you know, there's like a hair in the mag that's quite big and long. But you know, sometimes people like it. It's like, yeah, there was no film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So last question, and sort of bringing together quite a few of these questions that have come through from people is, you know, I think people are really eager to know, you know, if you had one thing that you could give people advice on in terms of shooting film, the first step, what would you say to them? Olan?
First step. First of all, I was going to say it's not as daunting as it is, but I mean, it is daunting, and nothing's going to take away that anxiety you would have with shooting on film, but you just got to do it. I would say start with film photography, so buy a film camera, so at least you understand stocks. So when someone says 200 ASAR stock, 400 ASA, 800 ASA, then understand that different stocks have different looks. So like Fuji looks a certain way, Kodak looks a certain way, black and white gives it, and then that's just a good introduction into textures and colors, because I think that's what film is all about. Even though, you know, nowadays you just have, I think it's only Kodak making motion picture film at the moment, but at least it's still good to know roughly how film responds to light. So if you shoot someone under fluorescent light, there's this like greeny, interesting look that some people like. So I'd say start experimenting with film photography. Once you get your head around that, it's worth maybe picking up a Bolex, a Super 16 Bolex, which is very affordable. I think they range from like £200 to £1,000. But again, it's hand cranked. You can go out on the streets, shoot stuff, and email someone at Kodak and tell them that you've got a 100-foot roll and you'd like to see how it came out. And I think on many occasions they have actually done this for me at no cost. So that's also something worth knowing, that, you know, these post houses are keen to get new voices through the door, and they actually, I mean, it's in their best interest that we all keep shooting film. I would say that will be what I would say. And once you shot that first Bolex stock, then I mean, like, the sky's the limit.
And Molly, we're running out of time now, but
I'd say do the same and take a light meter out and just meter stuff and write down, you know, like my highlights were 5 stops over on this shot, and make a note of it, and so that when you can review the rushes, you understand how to progress and you understand what you're doing, and then, you know, you'll learn quickly what works, what doesn't for you, because it's subjective. So, you know.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Just before we go, do you want to give a quick shout outs to your Instagrams and where people can find more about you and follow your careers? Olan?
Yeah, it's like my name, no space, everywhere. So Olan Colade on Instagram. I don't really use Twitter that much. Actually, I don't use it, but I still have an account. And then my website, olancolade.com. Yeah, pretty much just my name everywhere. That's where you find me.
Perfect.
My Instagram's MAAMW. and just that. And then my website is mollymainwalker.com. So,
Cool. And I would absolutely urge people to go and follow these wonderful DPs. Lots of amazing stuff on both their websites and on their Instagram pages. So just a final thank you then for joining us. And, good luck with everything going on. And we'll hand back over to Alex.
Thanks, Callum.
Thank you so much, Callum. Thank you, Molly and Olan. That was really fascinating discussion. I know I told you at the beginning not to look at the chat box, but I hope that you did see all the amazing comments that you got, especially when we were playing your clips. So really well done. Thank you. Thanks everyone who submitted questions. Callum did the best he could to get through as many of them as he could, but there were 140 questions. So apologies to all of those whose questions we couldn't answer. Just before you go, I wanted to let you know that we have a festival survey that we would love for you to fill in. And I know in the comments you said how much you enjoyed today's session. It would be great if you could officially tell us that by filling in our survey. And also any tips on how you think we can improve our online events moving forward. That's really, really, really useful information for us. And next up, we have a session for aspiring animators and all those of you who love music. We'll be talking about the making of Dua Lipa's 45-minute music video for Future Nostalgia, which involved 13 different artists and animators from all around the world collaborating remotely together during lockdown. So it should be a lot of fun. That session starts at 4 p.m. So in 40 minutes, but there is still time to register for it over on Eventbrite. And I think Noel just posted that link, the Eventbrite link for registration in the chat box. So do join us then. Thank you again, Callum, Molly and Olan, and have a lovely afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, see ya. Thanks. Bye.